All right, guys, we've got Justin Dulihanty here, and before we get started with the podcast, we're going to find out, can Justin hit his targets?
Okay, let's try it. When you're ready. Oh.
Not bad. Good.
Oh, wow.
Two in the
It's
board.
a little bit racist.
Oh no! It's on the out.
Pressure got him.
Oh.
At least they're all on the board. They're all
Yeah, that's the main thing.
That's a win.
G'day, Justin.
G'day, Chris.
Good to see you, mate.
And you, sir.
Love the darts. You're on the board.
Mate, I made an attempt, I didn't have any prior conditioning leading up to it, so...
We really threw that on you, didn't we?
I know, hey.
He's
there you
some
go.
darts.
Yeah, bit of pressure.
So, mate, good to have you on the podcast. Been looking forward to this one.
Good, mate. I'm pleased to be here. Yeah.
Well, why don't we start off with just a bit of an introduction, and I'll let you sort of carry this. What do you do? Who do you serve? What's the business? Give us the background.
So I run a men's personal development company. I've been running it for about 7 years now, and it originally started when my background is in the health and fitness industry, as you know. There was this real predominant message that came through from all the clients that I worked with, which was centered around self-worth. And people would come to us to try and improve their physical appearance with the intent to feel better about themselves. So everything that we were working on from a physical side of things, just, it was like, what's at the core of all this? And it was self-worth deficit. So I also struggle with my own self-worth issues growing up, and I realized that the body composition side of things, the physical appeal was just the mask that I was wearing, and I was trying to get that external validation from everyone around us. And you see this is quite predominant in the fitness industry. It's massive. All you need to do is go to a bodybuilding show and you'll see that loud and clear, right?
Oh, yeah.
You feel
absolutely.
it, you need to have a shower.
So the insecurities.
Yes, so deep-seated insecurities. So from there, from doing my own work, and there was a couple of, real pivotal moments reaching different bifurcation points, which was like, it's loud and clear, it's in front of your face, you've got to work on your self-worth and self-esteem. So I did. And long story short, I began to just develop a stronger passion towards working on the insides, which is around self-worth and emotional development. So, mate, we've been doing that for the last 7 years. We're in 11 different countries now. And, mate, we've got a really unique, multifaceted approach to men's mental health. Yeah.
Yeah, and as an observer from afar, because we were in Sydney together in the fitness industry, we kind of knew each other from afar, but, I don't think we'd sort of met too much. But then, we're friends on Facebook, as most people in the fitness industry are. And you watch people and you see them develop and you see them grow. And so I saw you sort of turn yourself from a fitness professional PT to then being on Facebook. There was a period of time I was like, what is this guy doing? What's he?
I probably didn't even know what I was doing at that point, mate.
He's in Bali. He's got videos. He's recording videos that are they're definitely not about fitness.
No,
and they're appealing to men. They were talking, some about dating, some about life results. And so there was that WTF moment.
Sparks the curiosity.
Very curious. And then later down the track, we connected a bit in Bali when we were both living there. I was there temporarily, and then now in the Gold Coast, and having worked together and been on the inside of your business and having a look at your high ticket, remote sort of online coaching business and seeing such a thriving ecosystem and such change that you've created. All your testimonials are just incredible. So watching that journey, it's been, it's been awesome to see that take place. At what point did you sort of realize that you needed to get off the gym floor and start to get into the coaching space and get into the online space, really?
I don't think it was a massive realization. I found myself in a situation where everything that I was doing just wasn't working, and I kind of seen that as a universal message. Like, everything that you're attempting to do in this particular industry is just, you're working against the grain, and everything was it just kept pressing up against me. So many different messages. So there was one moment that my business partner at the time, he said to me, he goes, "Do you want to start a men's online fitness service?" And I said, "Fuck it, let's go there." And I didn't have a job at the time, mate. I had a massive breakdown at this particular point. It was the pivotal moment in my life. And so we started working on that together. And then we had a bit of a relationship bust up. It didn't work out. There was a misalignment amongst a couple of different things. And then I just took the business over. And then from there, it started as the online fitness stuff. But then I brought in the mental and emotional development side of things. And then I just had a massive passion for that. So from there, it just sort of grew and evolved and developed. And now, realistically, it took me probably about 3 years to actually land, really solidify what it was that I was doing and who it was specifically that I was targeting and who I was working with. And it took a long time to get that clarity, but as soon as I got that clarity, I started to get the right type of clients. And then from there, we just developed the systems, put everything in place, and then it just sort of took over from there.
I'd love to know, like when you say the right type of clients, I think it'd be really interesting for the audience to understand who you work with and what's the transformation that they have, because the work you do is super, super interesting.
Thank you. The typical sort of... Look, the root cause of all human dysfunction stems from poor self-worth. If you have a look at every aspect of our existence, if there's some deficit somewhere, if there's a problem or a challenge, the main thing that stands out is romantic endeavours. So if we're struggling in a relationship, it's because of the condition, the original childhood condition that we grew up accepting as normal. All those beliefs and behaviours and values, everything that was embedded in us, and the emotional underdevelopment, that'll determine the type of connection that we have with someone. So through my own experience, there's these particular personality deficits or personality adaptations, and you might hear things like people pleasers or fixer rescuer personality types. They're primarily the type of clients that we work with. They're very much attracted to personality disordered females, and that can be quite complex. It's kind of like they're trying to work out this little puzzle, and if you think about a puzzle, when you put that last piece and you're like, fuck, that feels good, there's a sense of completion there. So whatever's missing in us will be attracted to in somebody else, and we try to fix those aspects in them, but really what we're doing, that's the projection. So we're trying to actually fix that part in ourselves, but it's much easier to go to work on someone else than it is to go internal in ourselves. So all of our clients struggle with severe self-worth issues. The way that they'll be able to identify that is through their challenges in their relationships, like these toxic relationships. They might have, hyper-controlling behaviours, low confidence, low self-esteem. Some of them have addictions that are quite disguised, like social media might be an addiction, sex porn, masturbation, they're addictions, your typical ones like substance abuse, or working long hours. Like the way that they construct their life is very distracting from what they're trying to be. They've been attempting to run away from their entire life, which is, emptiness, depression, sadness, unresolved trauma. But it's they live that chaotic life, and it's the maintenance of those harmful life conditions because there is a payoff to it. And they're the type of clients that we work with, and they're typically in the age of, usually not so much before the age of 30, because you need like a certain amount of time and experience on planet Earth to feel the wear and tear of the repetitions of pain. And then from there, you get enough life experience that, maybe I'm the common denominator. I've got to work on myself because it can't be everybody else. So usually it's about 30 years of age. It's a little bit challenging to work with men beyond 60 because they're a little bit set in their ways, and everything's pretty deeply ingrained at that particular point. They're not completely gone, but
there's still hope.
Yeah, we still work with them.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Sorry, you go.
Well, there's so much to unpack here. There's the business model that you've got, which is, I think, really fascinating. You've served a lot of people, but there's also the performance element, which I'm interested in. As a sales coach, as a sales trainer, looking at what is the key leading indicator of a high performance or a low performance, whether it's on a day, week, month, or just in general. And I think sales is a really good analogy for life, because we're rewarded in sales on results, not time. You can show up to a desk job and get paid for 8 hours, but in sales, if you show up and you're depressed or you're feeling, low,
people are buying energy,
you're gonna walk out with no money.
Yeah.
And so, and that's the same in life as well. Life rewards your performance and not just time and showing up. So, maybe if we go into that, what you said about the key determinant of success is self-image and the way we view ourselves. I think that's around cultivating certainty, cultivating confidence. What do you do to kind of help that? Because, if you're a salesperson, it's easy to fake It's easy to fake confidence when things are going well, but when, like in life, when you get squeezed, if something happens, you get an objection, or you've had a long night, or things aren't going well in your own life at home, you're showing up, you're being squeezed by life or by the prospect or by someone. What tends to come out is actually what's inside. So the fake, the facade is removed. So what do you guys do to kind of help that?
First of all, let's address the confidence thing. As a human behavior and psychological professional in this particular arena, my job is to identify personalities, have a look at characteristics, traits, imperfections, all those types of things. One thing that a lot of guys come to us with is confidence issues. So I thought, where does confidence actually comes from? And it's pretty simple. When you look at a particular area of your life and it's working out for you and you have confidence in that area, it just comes to one thing: it's a competence. So if I'm good at my role and I'm performing there and the results speak directly to that particular piece, then I'm going to have confidence, because the thing that I'm doing is offering those results, and that's confirmation to the thing that I'm doing. So if you do that through repetition, that develops your belief system that I'm good at what I do. And so it's like, then when you have you think about, okay, how do I get good at what I do? And it's like fucking skill sets. If you and through repetition and trying and testing and being open to receiving constructive criticism and feedback, and those subtle adjustments, and that feedback, that'll determine whether you're going to be good at what you do or not. There's that skill set piece, and then you've got a self-worth deficits can also positively impact us in this particular arena as well, because if you don't feel good enough, and let's just say, for example, you grew up in an environment where you came home and you were very excited to show your parents that you got B pluses and a fucking A, and they're like, "Where's the A plus?" And it's like, okay, I'm going to go get an A plus. Like, where's the A plus plus? So it doesn't matter what you do, it's never good enough. So that just drives that belief that I've got to excel, I've got to achieve. And when I achieve, then I get that external validation. So if you're in a sales environment where you've got people that are rewarding that behavior, and that's your dopamine hit based on that, it's kind of like you just get you get fed, and every time that you do something good, you get fed again, and that's your dopamine hit. So it's a constant ongoing need to get that dopamine hit, but it's a chasing of the highs to avoid the lows, and that's a constant ongoing endeavor, man. It's not fulfilling. So then it's like, well, you got to look at the reward system. If we're driven by pain, you got to look at, and that's orientated by pain. I've got to get out of pain, and I've got to get those dopamine boosts. But it's not a long-term sustainable process. So one thing is, you've got to be confident. You've got to have that comes from your competence. But then you've got to have fucking tenacity in this arena, man. Like, sales is it's not an easy gig if you're not driven and you don't have that intrinsic drive, which is, let's be realistic about this thing. Like, sales is about money. How much money can you make realistically? You're doing it for to sell.
Yeah, most people aren't rocking up to work, to hear about John and Jenny's problems. No,
exactly right.
Because they want to do it. They're there for the money. So there's that level of you're there for the money. Yeah. You've got to put on an act to some degree. But what
I think you've got to be truly passionate about what you're selling, and there's got to be a level of alignment there. And if you're not aligned to the thing that you're selling, it's going to come across in inauthenticity. And I'm a big believer in authentic sales. I think the moral and ethical component needs to come back into sales. And it's, you don't sell something to someone that they don't need. And that's something that I've been really big on for a number of years now, because I have sold to, admittedly, I have sold when I've been in desperate moments when money hasn't been good. And it always attracts the wrong types of clients. I have to refund them. It becomes a massive pain in the ass. And then, I've got to look at myself in the mirror and say, fuck, I'm out of integrity here. And that's a big thing. So if you are aligned to the work that you do, you'll have a passion in helping and assisting people cross the finish line on whatever it is that they want. And as a consequence of that, I'm a big believer that the universe will just reward you handsomely as a result of that. So I think it's about being aligned to the industry, being aligned to the offer. And knowing that you're making a genuine difference, and then it's that alignment that causes that motivation and the desire to make a difference.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that really helps. Like, if I think back to, like, personally and salespeople that I've worked with previously, like, when they are going through those down periods, if they're not there for any other reason than making money, they're like, oh, let's find a new offer to work on, or let's find a new gig. I've done a lot of recruitment in real estate, and there's lots of agents that will jump around to a different agency whenever the market goes shit.
Sure.
And the others are like, no, I'm here for a bigger purpose. Yeah, I've got a bit of a dip in commission at the moment, but I'm still pushing forward because I know the reason why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And so it helps them through those periods where you could just kind of give up.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, agree with that.
Confidence equals competence equals confidence. And I think the other way around as well. Confidence can be seen as competence by someone. So having confidence is important to sell, and it can be easy to manufacture, or it can be manufactured to be seen as competence. When I started golf, playing golf.
There's a look on your face with that.
Moved to Noosa when I started golf.
Very serious.
As all middle-aged men start
better
to.
than that than me at darts.
Yeah, I think,
Similar probably, like decent most of the time and then a really wayward one.
yeah, I think the darts lifestyle is probably not for you, man.
No, man, no.
But yeah, when I started golf, I also started surfing. So I had these two skills which I was starting out at. I moved to Noosa, beautiful spot, and yeah, I started these two new hobbies because my old hobby, football and training in the gym, like just wasn't fulfilling me anymore. Obviously, footy I couldn't keep running around a park, and the gym, I'd been in a gym since I was sort of 12 years old, and I needed something else. I needed to get out. Yeah. And so I started golf and then started surfing, as you do when you move to somewhere like Noosa. But what I felt, I was so incompetent. I'd walk around feeling shit.
Yeah.
Because I was putting myself in these two things which I was so out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And it just, the impact of my confidence, just in other areas of life as well, I just feel shit. I'd leave the golf course after chunking 20 irons and
perfectly reasonable explanation for that.
Explain that.
It's one of those cases of putting all your eggs in one basket. And so if let's say, for example, you move up to Noosa, you're trying to adjust, settle in, find your lifestyle, rebuild your tribe. It's a new environment, and you're latching onto one thing, and you want to get really good at it. And so, take another example where a man has very low self-esteem, low self-worth, and he's not self-reliant. So he's constantly depending on someone or something to fill that gaping in a void. And so he puts all his eggs in one basket. So he ends up getting into the romantic relationship, and there's a lot of infatuation there. And all of a sudden, this is filling that gaping in a void. But he's got hobbies, he's got interests and friendships, and they're all of a sudden no longer as deeply fulfilling as this thing over here. So then he starts to focus more on this, neglecting these areas as well. He has an excessive reliance on to keep him afloat. So if that doesn't work, and he's neglected all these other areas of his life at an unconscious level, and his self-worth is dependent upon this thing working, and that collapses, so does his identity, so does his self-worth. So that's why it's important for us to have a high level of diversity in how we structure in our life in a way that gives us the ultimate stability, where we're getting fulfillment from multiple different areas of our life. So when we're talking about competence and confidence, most people have no clue who they are, but their value proposition is based on where they're achieving success in one particular area of their life. So when they lack that diversity and range, or they lack genuine self-worth within themselves, they can't be competent at themselves because they're constantly living aligned to these little facades, and these facades they're based on their environment and who's in their environment. So if you have to detach from your authentic self to be someone for, the people at work, if you have to detach from your authentic self to gain acceptance and approval from your partner or, work colleagues or whatever, you're in constant practice of out-practicing your authentic self. So if you don't know who you are and you're incompetent at being your authentic self, then you're going to have no inner confidence. So that we unconsciously latch onto the things in our life that give us that false sense of security internally. But the moment that thing no longer works, our foundations erode from beneath us.
It's a dangerous thing.
It is, but a lot of people do it.
So I've been there, and I think Chris has as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mine was my business. I was so attached to my whole identity was in my business, and I was the successful recruitment business owner. And then I fell pregnant and I was super, super sick. And in the end, for lots of different reasons, we ended up deciding to close that business. And I went through this like horrible period of just ego death where I had to just eat all of the, like, just face all of the things that I'd been like so busy. And like you said before, like I was just, like, attached to this business, keeping myself so busy and distracted for so long. Yeah. And then I just had to deal with it while I was super sick and in bed for 7 months. Yeah. Chris had to witness that, but you're a great support. I think you'd been there too.
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, we can all agree with that. Yeah,
I think we've all been there to some degree, where you attach your identity onto something. You know, sporting players when they finish up, when they retire from identity crisis. You know, that was their thing. That was what they were known for.
We get a lot of guys in the military, SAS.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Well, they're so. What people don't understand is that we're naturally attracted to industries that match our deficits. So, when you've got guys that are in, like first responders, for example. Or they kind of like fit into the like coaches, psychotherapists. They all have got that fixer rescuer sort of built into them. They just love helping people, personal trainers, you know. But when you're attracted to an environment that has such rigid conditions that teaches you how to operate as a person, it's usually because you have no sense of self. So then when you leave that arena, you don't actually know how to think autonomously. You don't know how to operate as a cohesive whole. You don't know how to think for yourself. And so then there's the ultimate feeling of lostness, like, fuck, I need a structure, I need a system to live aligned to. And that's a big one, you know, that's the same as any other organization. If you take on that identity and you make it your entire existence and that fails, then your whole self-worth and your identity just falls beneath you. It's fucking dangerous stuff.
Have you studied much of NLP?
A little bit.
Have you heard of logical levels?
I haven't spent too much time with it.
So it's sort of the concepts that you're explaining now, and it's change can happen on different levels.
6 levels of transformation? I think that's what
it might be that. So it's you're starting at identity, so self-image, so beliefs about yourself. That's the core of change, and then the next level is your beliefs about the world, and just whether it's abundant, whether there's plenty for everyone, whether it's scarcity, whether you've got a positive worldview or a negative worldview, and that's your beliefs and values. Yeah. The next is your skill set, sort of skills and competencies, and then your behaviours is the next. So what you do, you can change what you do, but if you don't have the skills, then and then finally is your environment. So changing the structure, changing things around you. Yeah. And change happens on those levels, and change can impact from the core right out to the environment, but then as well, like, it can go the other way. But just what you said there about structure and having those things, I think it can be really healthy to have a structure and have
definitely,
But then also, are we not addressing the root core of change? So I'm just interested to know, like, what if you could give some sort of a summary or a story of one of your students, like, what are the main factors to kind of building up your self-worth and sort of detaching from these identity, these things we attach to, which if we can detach from that, we're not then at risk when things change of our world collapsing.
I'll give you a real simple one. We're driven by our values and emotions. So all human behavior is driven by emotions, whether positive or negative. I don't like to say positive or negative because then we have a negative connotation to negative emotions. When I say negative, I'm referring to the vibrational frequency. So it's not like that we actually feel these vibrations in the body. It's, on a chart, you'll see that the light ones vibrate at a higher frequency, the dark ones. So I like to call them light and dark because there's the contrast of the two in every aspect of our life. So when you look at what drives someone's behavior, there's a fulfillment strategy, and it's a Pavlovian response. You've heard of Pavlov's dogs, right? So it's a reward-based system. When we're looking at getting someone back to their authentic self, you can do that through a values elicitation process. So if you identify someone's values and you teach them how to live aligned to those values to fulfill those values, and every single one of those values chunks up to an identity, that's a part of us. So when you hear people refer to a part, they're actually referring to an identity. Now, a lot of people have, issues with secondary gain or, conflicting of values. So let's just say, for example, someone really values their health, but then the only way, and they also value connection. The only way that they experience connection is by getting pissed. So they have to compromise or affect their health, in order to gain connection.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you want to get in touch with us, go to the Closers Dojo on Facebook. This is a Facebook group, free Facebook group for anyone looking to sell or build a sales team. We do sales trainings in there. We share a lot of resources. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it.
So we're teaching people about what their values are. But it's not enough to just teach them what their values are and how to live aligned to those values. You have to have that diversity that I was speaking about before. So it's usually you look at about 5 to 7 different ways in which you could fulfill a value. That way it gives you the ultimate level of diversity. So if one way fucks up, then it's like, well, that's cool because I've got 4 or 5 or 6 more ways of fulfilling those values. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's one thing. And then you look at your environmental conditions, which you're absolutely correct. That tells us everything that we need to know about someone and how they're operating their life, and also their nervous system as well. So if someone's quite chaotic in terms of their nervous system, having an inability to regulate due to, the childhood conditioning, it's called emotional developmental arrest. You experience a lot of pain as a child. You shut down your feelings and emotions. It's kind of like an involuntary response. It just happens automatically. You don't make a conscious choice to do it. So you might be in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, but you're stunted at the age of a toddler. But you're a toddler encased in an adult's body. If you look at the environment, you look at how someone's structured their life, and there's no fucking lies in that whatsoever. Because if someone's life is chaotic and crazy and is not well adjusted and stable, what you're seeing is what's going on internally from their emotional state, and that gives birth to poor impulse control. So they don't have an inability to. It's like that delayed gratification that people really should be seeking. So one is the values, and then there's another thing you can do. It's just like you can do an audit, like a life audit. What are the very simple? Like let's be quite literal about it. What are the things that I'm doing that result in negative outcomes? What are the things that I could be doing that will result in positive outcome? So if the positive outcome leads to positive emotions, that challenges the beliefs about the person that you are, and you do that through repetition. It's kind of like going to court and you say, well, whose case is going to win? It's like whoever's got the most compelling evidence. So the evidence is going to be based on cause and effect, which is what I do, there's an outcome to that. So if you're behaving, changing, altering your behavior, you're going to change and alter the outcome. So the best thing you can do is think, what can I do in this particular moment? And is what I'm about to do going to result in a favorable outcome, or am I going to shame and guilt myself for it? And so it's about making conscious choices and decisions that produce those emotions that allow you to normalize and regulate your nervous system for positive emotions. And you do that over a period of time, your nervous system begins to adjust to those. It's like the inner emotional climate. So that becomes your new norm.
How long does that process take? It sounds
12
like
to 18 months.
And how important is it? Like, I'm just thinking about how hard this must be for some people to do. Because their environment, like we talk about environment, like their environment, I'm imagining you're saying it's reflecting their old self.
Yeah.
Like, where does accountability come into that? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people who are like,
it's a massive
I'm changing.
It's such a good question. When we're changing from one to another, and you understand the construct of an identity and how much is actually involved in your beliefs, your values, you've got the environmental conditions, emotions sitting there too. There's Jordan Peterson speaks about it. It's called the retrogressive restoration of the persona, which is basically this in simple terms. Who I am today is no longer who I want to be. I've got to change. There's a lot of things that happen in our life, and it's like, fuck it. There's no choice but to change now. I have to do this. So then you go on a bit of a journey. You might meet your mentor. If you talk about the hero's journey and the meaning of the mentor, teaches you a bunch of things. You get this insight, intellectual understanding around who you are, why your life is the way that it is. So you can't unlearn that stuff, and that's the problem, because ignorance is no longer bliss. It's a choice at this particular point. So then you start making your subtle adjustments and your changes, and then you're getting tested, and you start implementing the tools, skills, and resources and strategies that you're being taught by someone who's ahead of the game. And then you start moving into this new version of yourself, but you still haven't bolstered that sense of self yet, that new identity. So you keep going back into the old one, but you can't fit back into who you used to be because you just know way too much now. So you go from one to another over a period of time. And that's where we hear self-sabotage that occurs, because I don't know who I am. I kind of got a bit of a concept of who I'm becoming, but I haven't really got certainty in that person yet. So I might go back out here and go back to the same environment, hang out with my old friends, get on the piss and drugs and all those types of things. But then you've got the void in between, which is no man's land. I don't know who the fuck I am. And that's a really scary place for a lot of people to be. So that's where accountability comes into it. So being self-accountable at that particular point where you don't have, when you have poor impulse control and emotional weakness, you don't have the stability and strength in yourself just yet. You need someone holding your feet to the fire. So that you do the work so you can create and manifest that new reality, and you bolster that new sense of self and that new identity. And that's where accountability comes into it. But accountability, what a lot of coaches don't recognize, is that that can create a form of codependency as well. Yeah. Because then you're not actually, the primary objective is to teach someone to become independent, but they have to develop a depending in that therapeutic relationship dynamic, which is you're now depending on me to teach you how to operate as a cohesive whole. So then the person has to, the person who's going through the transformation has to relinquish their control and the know-it-all, because that's their sense of certainty, and they've just got to let it sort of take over from there. For long enough that they structure and maintain their life in a certain way that they're now self-sufficient, they're now emotionally self-reliant, and then they just, you go, off you go live your life. Your job is done. But when people talk about 12-week transformations, what you can embed in someone is very little. What they get to experience can be a lot, but because there's such a strong reflex to going back to the world and everything that we know it to be, we have this strong reflex to go back to that. It's very hard for us to maintain that the course of action to really formalize and solidify and cement in that new identity without accountability. Yeah.
It's like unscrambling an egg to start with, to unwind the old patterns of behaviour that have been sort of embedded for the whole life, to then rebuilding.
So when someone changes me, you see them in a number of years and you're like, you've experienced significant transformation. That is worth so much acknowledgement, man. Like for someone to change, it's just so much, man. Like they have to give up. They're not only grieving the loss of their old self, and they've had to stumble forward in an absolute mess to get to the position where they have arrived at now. They're grieving the old version of themselves. They're grieving friends. They're grieving family. And I put this post on Instagram this morning. It's like, just be prepared if you want to change. There's going to be a lot that you have to give up, and that's uncomfortable. So when someone transforms, you know that they've been doing the work for a fucking long time, and you know that someone's transformed because they stop hanging around with the people that they used to, stop dating the type of people they used to as well.
It's big. It's big.
It is, man. It's massive.
It's
huge.
I went through a lot of change, and went on that pursuit of finding personal development courses, programs, and it was because the patterns that I was carrying out constantly resulted in bitch slaps from life. I constantly got feedback. I constantly got pain. And I was being delivered pain time and time again to the point where, and I chose it
to move through it.
I chose to move through it, but it was such a hard thing to move through, and there was a lot of relapses. And I think one example is booze. The amount of times I tried to give up booze and alcohol, and because it was a leading indicator of bad decisions and then bad life outcomes, and just shame,
regret.
Self-esteem. So the way especially because like you said, ignorance is no longer bliss. You get to a point where now you're self-aware. You're aware of who you want to be, where you're going. But now, when you make those decisions and you take those actions, and you're sort of putting your long-term goals, you're sacrificing long-term goals for that short-term high.
Yep. Nailed it.
It really nails your self-esteem, self-worth, because you're like, well, I'm now making decisions out of integrity, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then the hangover the next day is not just the hangover from the alcohol and lack of sleep. It's the hangover from your emotions, from your self-worth, and man, I would beat myself up big time. And it wasn't until I started saying that I just don't drink, as opposed to I'm off the piss, or I'm trying not to drink now. So I changed the language, changed my identity to I just don't drink. Complete shift in the response that I got from everyone. That I was, if I went to a party or a wedding, there was no pressure, because I'm just the guy that doesn't drink. I'm a teetotal.
People will challenge you when you say I can't drink. Like if you go to something like that and you say I can't, if there's a level of hesitation in there or a bit of a wiggle room, people want you to be a part of the tribe. So, but if you say I won't or I'm not, it's a firm decision, and it hits the unconscious mind at a deeper level.
And it's breaking a habit, the habit of, and there's triggers to habits. The habit loop, starts with the trigger, and the trigger can be environment, can be people you're around, and you get that desire, that craving for the reward. And that's the thing that then triggers the behavior to get the reward. It's like the Pavlov's dog. And it's very hard to break that cycle. But once you break it, I find, once I broke it a number of times, I felt it gave me confidence. So I'd wake up the next day confident, feeling good, self-worth improved, self-esteem built up. And so in my experience, I've completed the Hoffman, which was this big cycle of transformation, a 5-day retreat where you go away, you break down, you look at all your patterns, they get you into a room, and the first thing you say, when you're introducing yourself, you're not saying, "Hey, I'm Chris. G'day, I'm Chris. I do this." It's, "Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm in pain because." Mm-hmm. And so
that's interesting.
It's a confronting, introduction, and then you go through a cycle of, identification of your patterns, understanding where they come from, you're blaming the people who gave them to you, which in this case is a lot of through parents, and just, but blaming in terms of just acknowledging that it's not your fault, but you are to blame for the results. And
so you're blaming yourself, or you're blaming?
Well, you go through this. You go through this.
For
you're blaming who's responsible
That's
for the
healthy.
start. So you can
That's healthy.
you can detach from it, and you say, well, listen. When we're kids, we sort of get imprinted with beliefs, and basically our personality. Most of our personality is formed.
That's right.
By 7, they say, if we've got this much of our beliefs in life and learnings, then this much of it happens in that period,
and so there's only afterwards by outcomes.
Confirmed, embedded, and but then you take ownership. But it's an incredible journey. But a lot of those things have gone through, but it's just a hard thing to undo. It needs
to happen. Yeah, a lot of personal development industry is notorious for saying take ownership, which is fine, and it's important because no one can change but us. But if you don't pass the responsibility back to the person who is responsible for that, then you can very easily carry it, or it results in what's called emotional displacement, where you take it out on an easier target. It's like, you have a shit day at work is a micro version of it. You have a shit day at work, you suppress your emotions, you bottle everything up, you can't speak back to your boss because he's your boss. You go home and then your partner wears it. It's the same thing as childhood. If you don't give it back to your parents, it's like, they did the best thing that they could with the fucking resources that they had. It's like, yes, that's true, but also they cause significant amounts of pain, and you're having to spend the best part of your adult years putting yourself back to fucking together.
And cash. Like
lots, man. I've spent about $700,000 on personal development since I was 16 years old, I've earned that back, a lot more back, but it's, the gift is the curse, but if you're not passing responsibility back to who's responsible for it, then someone else is going to.
You can't take full ownership of these things.
No.
But I think there's like you say, there's responsibility from where you learn it from, because we learn everything when we're young, but then we need to take responsibility for changing, because we know the patterns aren't serving us, and we need to change, and we need to make change at different levels. And I think identity is such a key level to change. A lot of people try to change their environment. They change. They want to increase their income. They want to increase their. They want to buy a new car. They want to buy a new house. They want to get wealth. They want to get a partner. But these are external. These are environmental. And so changing that's still not going to fix the problems. I'm interested in your take on, like, where should people start if they want to make significant change, which, as we know, happens over 12 months, 18 months, maybe more, within a focused environment that's dedicated to helping them change and realize in your case, it's the alpha code. And so, for men, it's becoming the alpha version of themselves. Where do they start? Is it at the core? Is it just, do you start at the core? Can you start at the environment? Can you make some easy shifts in environment that can make it easy to change the core?
You can, but not prematurely. Let me ask you this question. What did it take for you to give up the booze?
Pain.
That. So we've all got this pain thermostat, right? Once we reach that in unbearable pain, then we're like, fuck, that's the motivation. I've got to make those changes. So we all have the straw that breaks the camel's back. So that's the first point. You can't do this prematurely, and you're ready when you're ready. You're not ready until you are. So there's that first point. And my model is keep running your fucking course until you get to that point. Let's not have a conversation until then, because there's so many lessons that you get to learn in the pain. So many resources and gifts, that's where a lot of your wisdom is actually, you gain from your pain, and, self-assessment, breaking down, why did I do what I do? And if you have the ability to ask yourself questions, then you'll come up with some answers. One of the questions that you could ask yourself is, what could I give up now that's going to improve my life? And why? Most people live in the moment. but not really in the moment. They're living for like that instant gratification. How do I take the pain away? They're not living with a forecast and thinking about, if I continue to do this shit, where the fuck am I going to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? You're like, who's going to want to marry a person like this? Who's going to want to be involved with me? It's like, you can't change when you meet your partner. You can't change when you've got the job. You got to change and be the change first and then create that life. You know, so it's so multifaceted, man, that to give you one or two things, it wouldn't do it the level of service or respect that it deserves. But I think one of the things that we can look at is do an honest stock take, you know, life audit. What am I doing? Write it down on paper, because sometimes we're just not conscious of the choices that we're making. It's like, look at your cause and effect of your life. If I do this, what does the next day look? If I get on the piss, what's the next day look like? Well, self-shame, regret, you know, end up spending more money. It often ends up in, you know, splurges on pokies or fucking rack or whatever it is, you know, and then it just cascades from there. And then it's like, well, the next 3 or 4 days I'm not productive at work. I'm not motivated anymore. But dopamine being stripped. It's like, well, if I continue to do that, how much money am I going to have, you know, in 5, 10 years from now? So you create a bit of a vision for the future on both sides. You look at, okay, if I continue to do this, that's where my life is going to be. But if I change the course of, you know, action and I stop doing that, what could I replace it with instead? Think about humans. We don't want to go without. So if you take something away, a behavior, you have to replace it with something else. Otherwise, we feel like there's something missing. So if you take something out, you've got to replace it with something. So it's like, why am I choosing that behavior? What am I getting out of it? Because there is a benefit to it. And if you're smart enough, or you have a coach that can extract that information and say, here it is, that's why you're doing what you're doing. Let's find a more resourceful way to get those needs met. And you start practicing that over a period of time, then you're going to start making some changes. And you knew that with the alcohol. I was the same thing, man. Absolutely. So I think that's the first point. And everybody knows what they've got to give up. Everyone knows. It's a load of shit when someone says, I don't know how to change my life. It's like, what are you doing that's dismantling you? You know, what are you doing? What's your self-sabotage strategy? I don't know. It's like, well, that's not a valid excuse, because, well, that's what infants do. When people say, I don't know, they just want to pass responsibility on everyone else to come up with an answer. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be self-reliant if you continue with that model. If you really want to change, you will change, but you've got to get to that point where there's insurmountable pain. And, man, as I said to you, I'll just reiterate, you're not ready until you're ready.
How do you make it stick after, you know, pain, and then the time between pain when you're feeling good? I think that's a danger. That was always a danger for me. I'd have the pain, swear off all my bad habits, and yeah, then the time, the amnesia would kick in.
Yep.
Feel good.
Forget about it.
Yeah, forget about it, and then things happen. And I know, you know, in the 12 steps, you hear about AA 12 steps. They have faith. The faith kind of keeps them together when they're tempted. But what is it? Community? What do you kind of?
It's emotional development, man. It's what it comes down to. Yeah, if you're suppressing your emotions and your emotions are controlling you, you won't be able to control the behaviours that are driven by them.
So it's maturity.
It's emotional maturity. It's not our chronological age, you know, not in our physical body. Our maturity is determined by our emotional development. So, again, if we shut our feelings and emotions off at a young age, we might be 30 or 40 years old, chronological in our physical body, but we might be a toddler internally. And you have a look at how a toddler reacts. Splitting, love you, hate you, come here, go away. That's what's responsible for that. So it's really about the feeling work, and that's why we spend a disproportionate amount of time with emotional development and feeling work, because all the stored emotions in the cellular structure in the body, when they're attempting to be released and we try to suppress it, that's where all of our dysfunctional behaviors come from. It's a need to avert those uncomfortable feelings and emotions. But it's like any fear, man, whatever you fear is just going to control you until you face it. And if you're fearing a part of yourself, then you're going to constantly try to dissociate from yourself with those behaviors. But if you face the uncomfortable feelings and emotions and you learn to feel them and tolerate them, and you release them from the body, and you can get well. So that's, you know, the two primary things that we work on is building genuine self-worth and emotional development. That solves most of our fucking problems.
It's profound, man.
Isn't it wild?
It's so wild. It's so deep, but it's also
so obvious.
It's obvious.
It's so
you
obvious.
sell it out, it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense.
It's very simple. So there's the macro picture. What choices am I making? What outcomes am I achieving? What's the emotions that is producing in the beliefs? And then you look at the micro. What can I implement? What adjustments can I make today? There's got to be a reward process at the back end of it. And that reward process can be as simple as self-acknowledgement. You didn't drink today. It's like, fuck, What an accomplishment. Didn't drink this week. What an accomplishment. And that just stacks layers to self-worth and self-belief. So
with performance, so a lot of high performance comes from pain. So it's that need for validation. We spoke about that. So
true.
People, they've got low self-esteem, low self-worth, and that drives them to perform. And what percentage of high performers out there actually are driven from that? I'd say
99%.
So how do you then achieve?
and that's okay.
Yeah, which is
great. That's okay, because it's like, well, some of the most challenging clients I've ever worked with are multi-millionaires. Fucking own yachts, private jets and shit. No one else would ever see them. They're one-to-one clients. Actually, that's not true. Some of the psychologists I've mentored are some of the most challenging cases, very change resistant. But they're driven by pain. And it's that need for external validation. And once they arrive there, because they haven't done the inner work, it's not fulfilling. And it's even more disappointing because they've achieved the ultimate victory and they've got everything they want. They look around, it's like, and I'm still fucking empty?
Yeah.
And
I'm still dead inside? Like, maybe I've got to achieve more. So it's another target met, another goal set, accomplishment, victory, and it's the chasing of the highs to avoid the lows. And I'm going to circle back around to this thing. I'm just going to be redundant here. It's like maintaining that emotional rhythm, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So that comes from a belief system and mindset of it's never enough, and that's because they don't feel like they are enough. So it doesn't matter what they achieve or accomplish, it just stems from that place. So all the rewards that we get to achieve, I think money is a beautiful thing, and I love it. And I've got a pretty healthy relationship with it. I don't store it. I don't have scarcity. I have an experience with it, and if I want to have that experience, I will, and I don't deny myself of it. I used to have a lot of guilt and shame, guilt for spending. I'm like, fuck, where's this going to come from? It's like, no, I've got to believe that there's so much money. And I think when you're living in states of scarcity, that'll affect your performance, and that's a scarce individual, not a scarce mindset. It's a scarce individual because, again, it stems from not enough. So you have this constant unrelenting pursuit to achieve. But if you're not doing the inner self-worth work and you're not accomplishing, you're not valuing the accomplishments and everything that it took to get there, you've got to fucking have a look at yourself sometimes and just go, man, I've actually done a lot. I've accomplished a lot. And it's that self-validation. It's that confirmation, self-confirmation as opposed to external validation. You're confirming what you believe about yourself. So, that can happen in one area, but again, you've got to have that diversity. So I don't think it's a bad thing that people are driven by pain. I think fundamentally and biologically we are. Like, we've got more motivation to get out of scarcity than we do to achieve and thrive. There's two completely models from surviving and thriving. It's so fucking much harder to thrive than it is to get off your ass to survive.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Thinking back to the beginning of my career, I don't actually know what the statistic is, but it's a much higher percentage. Humans are driven away from pain in a much higher percentage than they are towards pleasure. Yeah. And so I think some of the hardest times that people have is actually when pain's kind of gone and it's like, oh, well, I'm not in pain anymore. Like, what am I
And that's the point
for?
that you're making. So
how
where's
do you
the
get
motivation?
motivated?
Yeah.
Where's your motivation come from? And I've been through that too, big time, because I started making all this money and I'm thinking, well, shit, I'm out of scarcity now. I'm not having to sell furniture. In fact, this shit's like stacking up in abundance. And then the motivation drops and then it starts going down a little bit. It's like, fuck, now it's time to get moving again. What happened for me is I had to get really aligned on the vision again. I had to remind myself of the reason why I was doing what I was doing, and I had to clean up a couple of different areas of my life that were distracting me. And in this year in particular, I think we've accomplished more in the last 3 months than I have in the last 3 years, and that's directly as a consequence of just sitting down and thinking, where do I want to be in the next 10 years? So now my motivation isn't coming from I got two motivations. Used to be money, okay, and achieving results, and I need to achieve results because I need to prove to myself that I was good at what I do, and that's been done over and over again, thousands of times. But now it's coming from a place where the more I mature and I ground myself, I think, what's my vision look like in the future? Man, I want to be in a position where I can take care of my wife and kids. She doesn't have to work. She can have a passion project or something. But that for me would be a massive gift to offer her. And that's where my motivation comes from. And then, the legacy piece of really leaving this planet in a better place. When I'm in my deathbed, I can reflect back on the work that I've done and just know that I've made a significant contribution and that the planet is left in a better place as a result of the fucking hard work that I've done.
the best sales reps that I've trained and worked with and managed and led, they're the ones that they're driven by vision.
Yeah.
They're driven by vision. You know, the guys who are high performers, when they're in scarcity, it's so fluctuating.
It's a tough
and you see sort of ups and downs. You know, when they're short on cash, they perform. They show up. They do extra hours. But when when things are good and when they are fed, and they don't have the pain driving them,
yeah,
things don't perform and they don't show up and they don't get to the levels, or they don't achieve their ultimate outcomes or their ultimate potential. And I think sort of achieving your potential from a place of vision is much more fulfilling than achieving it from pain.
It is. There's no two ways about that. It's you've got the underdog that turns up and wins, but it's tough to stay on top. But that's why it's important to create two different images. What's life look like if I don't do this? What do I stand to gain? What do I have to give up? And then it's like, if I do, then what's the possibilities? It's endless.
Mate, it's been an incredible chat. Where can people find you?
I'm just about to finish my first book. I'm wrestling with the name of it at the moment. It's called Fuck Therapy.
Oh, I like that.
Why therapy keeps you in therapy. I want to give men hope that there are other modalities of treatment, other therapeutic pathways that they can take to work on the root cause of the issue as opposed to dealing with the symptoms. I haven't really bolstered that, but you can go to the mensdevelopmentacademy.com. Yeah.
Awesome, mate.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
It's been a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Learn a lot.
Great.
I'm going to listen back, take notes.
Yeah.
Do a consult if you want.
Do a consult, mate.
I feel like
We're
I've
gonna
just had
sign
a
up.
consult. I said to Chris this morning, I know I'm not a man, but I feel like I want to sign up. Like listening to Justin's stuff, I've learnt so much.
That's a great compliment. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, brother.